May 14th, 1982, 11:30 a.m. Return of the Jedi soundstage, Elstree Studios. Harrison Ford was sitting in his dressing room, reviewing the day's scenes, when Mark Hamill burst through the door without knocking. Harrison looked up, surprised by the intrusion, but what he saw in Mark's face made his blood run cold. His friend and co-star of 5 years was trembling with rage, holding a script in his white-knuckled grip, his usually cheerful demeanor replaced by something Harrison had never seen before. Pure betrayal. "Harrison," Mark said, his voice shaking with emotion, "I know what you did." Those 6 words would destroy one of Hollywood's most famous friendships and change the course of Star Wars history forever. What followed wasn't just an argument between 2 actors. It was the explosive end of a brotherhood that had survived fame, fortune, and the pressures of creating one of cinema's greatest franchises. "What are you talking about, Mark?" Harrison asked, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew exactly what Mark had discovered. The secret meeting with George Lucas, the private conversation about Luke Skywalker's role in Return of the Jedi, the suggestion that maybe Mark's character wasn't as essential to the story as originally planned. "Don't lie to me," Mark said, stepping closer, his voice rising. "You went behind my back to George. You told him that Luke Skywalker was getting too much screen time, that the audience was more interested in Han Solo. You tried to get my scenes cut, Harrison. My scenes. After everything we've been through together, after 5 years of friendship, you stabbed me in the back." The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Harrison Ford, the man who had built his reputation on loyalty and professionalism, had been caught in an act of betrayal that would haunt both men for decades. But to understand how their friendship could implode so completely, you need to understand what had been building between Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill since the very beginning of the Star Wars saga. On the surface, they were the perfect team. Han Solo and Luke Skywalker, the smuggler and the farm boy who saved the galaxy together. But underneath the public friendship was a complex web of professional jealousy, competing egos, and fundamentally different approaches to fame and success. When Star Wars premiered in 1977, both men became instant global superstars, but their careers took very different trajectories. Harrison leveraged his Star Wars success into a diverse film career, becoming one of Hollywood's biggest action stars through Indiana Jones and other franchises. Mark, however, found himself typecast as Luke Skywalker, struggling to find roles that would allow him to showcase his range as an actor. By 1982, as they prepared to film Return of the Jedi, the imbalance in their careers had created a tension that neither man wanted to acknowledge publicly. Harrison was Hollywood's golden boy, commanding top dollar for any role he wanted. Mark was still primarily known as the young Jedi, fighting to prove he was more than just a one-character actor. "You want to know the truth, Mark?" Harrison said, standing up to face his friend. "Yes, I talked to George, but not because I wanted to hurt you, because I was trying to save this movie from becoming a disaster." The confession was like throwing gasoline on a fire. Mark's face went white with shock and rage. "Save the movie? From me?" "Harrison, Luke Skywalker is the heart of Star Wars. He's the hero's journey. Without him there is no story. How dare you suggest that I'm the problem?" "That's exactly the problem," Harrison shot back, his own anger now rising to match Mark's. "You still think this is your story. You still think Star Wars belongs to Luke Skywalker. But audiences have moved on, Mark. They want Han Solo. They want the smuggler, the rogue, the guy who doesn't believe in the Force but fights for what's right anyway." The argument that followed would be remembered by everyone who witnessed it as one of the most vicious conflicts ever to erupt on a movie set. But it wasn't just about screen time or character importance. It was about 2 very different philosophies of what Star Wars should be and what it meant to be a hero. "You're unbelievable," Mark said, his voice cracking with emotion. "For 5 years, I thought we were friends. I thought we were partners. I defended you when people said you were difficult. I supported you when you wanted Han to die in Empire. And this is how you repay me? By going to George behind my back and trying to write me out of my own story?" "Mark, nobody's trying to write you out of anything," Harrison replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "I just suggested that maybe some of your scenes were redundant, that maybe the story could be tightened up." "Redundant." Mark's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried more venom than any scream. "You called Luke Skywalker redundant? The character that made all of this possible? The character that gave you Han Solo in the first place?" The truth was that Harrison had indeed met with George Lucas 2 weeks earlier. The conversation had started innocuously enough, Harrison expressing concerns about the pacing of Return of the Jedi and the balance between action and character development. But as the discussion continued, Harrison had made suggestions that went to the heart of Mark's role in the film. "George," Harrison had said during that fateful meeting, "I think we need to be honest about what audiences want from this movie. They want to see Han Solo rescue Princess Leia. They want to see the Millennium Falcon in action. They want adventure and romance. But Luke's spiritual journey, I'm not sure that's what they're paying to see anymore." Lucas had listened carefully to Harrison's concerns. As the creator of Star Wars, he was constantly balancing the artistic integrity of the story with the commercial demands of making a blockbuster film. Harrison's suggestions weren't entirely without merit. Han Solo had indeed become the breakout character of the franchise, and Harrison's charismatic performance was a huge part of the film's appeal. But what Harrison hadn't considered was how his private conversation with Lucas would be perceived by Mark if it ever came to light. And when Mark's agent called to inform him that several of Lucas' scenes were being reconsidered or potentially cut, it didn't take long for Mark to figure out where the pressure was coming from. "You know what the worst part is?" Mark continued, tears now visible in his eyes. "I actually looked up to you. I thought you were this honorable guy who stood by his friends. I thought Han Solo was just a character you played, not who you actually were. But I was wrong, wasn't I? You really are just a selfish smuggler who only looks out for himself." The personal attack was devastating, and Harrison felt something snap inside him. "Don't you dare psychoanalyze me with some amateur actor bullshit," Harrison snarled. "You want to know why I talked to George? Because you've been coasting on this character for 5 years. While I've been building a real career, you've been content to just be Luke Skywalker forever. Maybe if you'd pushed yourself as an actor instead of just cashing the Star Wars checks, you wouldn't need to worry about other people stealing your scenes." The cruelty of the comment shocked even Harrison as he said it. He had just attacked Mark's greatest insecurity. His struggle to establish himself as more than just a Star Wars actor. It was a blow designed to wound, and it hit its target perfectly. Mark stared at Harrison for a long moment, tears streaming down his face. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but filled with a finality that Harrison would remember for the rest of his life. "I guess I never really knew you at all," Mark said. "The Harrison Ford I thought I was friends with would never have done this. But you're not that person, are you? You're just an actor playing a good guy on screen while being something else entirely in real life." What happened next would cement the end of their friendship. Mark turned to leave, but Harrison, stung by the accusation and defensive about his own behavior, made one final, devastating comment. "Mark, maybe this is for the best. Maybe it's time we both stop pretending we're actually friends instead of just co-workers who got lucky together." Mark stopped at the door and turned back one last time. "You're right, Harrison. We're not friends. Friends don't betray each other. Have a nice life." The door slammed behind him, and Harrison Ford was left alone in his dressing room, surrounded by the wreckage of a friendship that had once meant everything to him. The remaining weeks of Return of the Jedi production were professionally cordial, but personally frigid. Harrison and Mark performed their scenes together with the skill of experienced actors, but anyone paying close attention could see that the easy camaraderie that had defined their relationship was gone. They spoke only when necessary for the work, avoided each other during breaks, and attended separate wrap parties when filming concluded. The impact of their falling out extended beyond just their personal relationship. The chemistry between Han Solo and Luke Skywalker that had been so vital to the first 2 films was noticeably diminished in Return of the Jedi. Their scenes together felt forced and mechanical, lacking the natural warmth that had made their friendship on screen so compelling. George Lucas, caught in the middle of the conflict, tried unsuccessfully to mediate between his 2 stars, but the damage was too deep and too personal for a simple director's intervention to repair. Both men were too proud and too hurt to make the first move toward reconciliation. "It was heartbreaking to watch," recalls one crew member who witnessed the aftermath of their fight. These were 2 guys who had genuinely cared about each other, who had been through this incredible journey together, and suddenly they couldn't even look at each other without pain and anger. The end of Harrison and Mark's friendship had professional consequences that extended far beyond Return of the Jedi. When discussions began about potential future Star Wars projects, the toxic relationship between the franchise's 2 biggest stars became a major obstacle. Lucas knew that any continuation of the saga would require both actors, but their mutual animosity made that prospect increasingly unlikely. For Harrison, the loss of Mark's friendship was a wake-up call about the cost of his ambition. He had achieved everything he wanted professionally. He was one of Hollywood's biggest stars, commanding millions of dollars per film and having his pick of any role he desired. But in pursuing that success, he had sacrificed something that couldn't be bought or replaced, a genuine friendship with someone who had shared in his greatest triumph. For Mark, the betrayal was a devastating blow that confirmed his worst fears about Hollywood and the people in it. He had always prided himself on being different from the typical movie star, more genuine, more loyal, more concerned with craft than career advancement. Harrison's betrayal shattered that idealism and left him questioning whether anyone in the entertainment industry could truly be trusted. The years that followed were marked by a careful choreography of avoidance. When both actors appeared at Star Wars conventions or promotional events, their interactions were polite but distant. Interviews where both men were present became exercises in professional courtesy, with each actor maintaining the facade that their relationship was simply a normal case of coworkers who had grown apart over time. But those close to both men knew the truth. The friendship that had once been genuine and deep had been poisoned by ambition, jealousy, and a single moment of betrayal that neither man could forget or forgive. The most heartbreaking aspect of their estrangement was how much they had genuinely cared for each other before everything went wrong. In the early days of Star Wars, when neither man knew if the film would be successful or if their careers would survive the association with a space opera, they had formed a bond based on mutual support and shared uncertainty. Mark had been the one who helped Harrison deal with the pressure of sudden fame, offering advice on how to handle fan attention and media scrutiny. Harrison had been the one who encouraged Mark to pursue other acting opportunities, even helping him get meetings with directors and producers who might consider him for non-Star Wars roles. Their friendship had been real, which made its destruction all the more tragic. As the years passed and both men aged, there were occasional rumors of potential reconciliation. Industry insiders would report that they had been seen talking briefly at premieres or award ceremonies. Fans would analyze their body language and group photos, looking for signs that the ice was thawing. But those hopes were always dashed by the reality of how deeply both men had been wounded. The betrayal wasn't just professional, it was personal. Harrison had violated Mark's trust in a way that struck at his deepest insecurities as an actor and a person. Mark's response had attacked Harrison's character in a way that challenged his fundamental sense of who he was. The closest they came to reconciliation was during the production of The Force Awakens in 2014. Both actors were returning to the Star Wars universe for the first time in over 30 years, and there was hope among cast and crew that the shared experience might heal old wounds. For a brief moment, it seemed like it might work. On the first day of filming, Harrison and Mark were cordial to each other, even sharing a few laughs during rehearsal. Crew members who remembered the tension from Return of the Jedi were optimistic that time had finally healed the rift. But the reconciliation was short-lived. During a break in filming, Harrison approached Mark privately, hoping to finally address what had happened between them decades earlier. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but witnesses reported seeing both men walk away visibly upset. Whatever was said, it was clear that the old wounds were still too raw to heal. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive, Mark later told a close friend. Some friendships, once broken, can never be put back together, no matter how much time passes. Harrison, for his part, never spoke publicly about the incident or his feelings about the end of their friendship. But those who knew him well could see the regret in his eyes whenever Mark's name was mentioned. The loss of that relationship was one of the few things in his successful career that he truly wished he could change. The tragedy of Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill's friendship wasn't just that it ended, but how it ended. It wasn't destroyed by external forces or inevitable career pressures. It was destroyed by a moment of weakness, a single decision to prioritize professional advantage over personal loyalty. Their story serves as a cautionary tale about the corrosive effects of success on even the strongest relationships. In Hollywood, where every friendship is potentially a business relationship and every business relationship is potentially a friendship, the lines between personal and professional loyalty can become fatally blurred. Today, both men are in their 70s, legends of cinema, who helped create one of the most beloved franchises in entertainment history. But they remain strangers to each other. Two old men carrying the weight of a betrayal that happened 40 years ago, but still feels fresh whenever they're in the same room. Their explosive fight didn't just end their friendship, it ended an era. The innocence and camaraderie of the original Star Wars trilogy died in that dressing room in 1982, replaced by the cold professionalism that would characterize all future interactions between Han Solo and Luke Skywalker. Harrison Ford's betrayal of Mark Hamill remains one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking behind-the-scenes stories, proof that sometimes the price of getting everything you want is losing the people who helped you achieve it. And sometimes, no amount of success is worth that cost.